There's something you've never admitted. Most of the defeats you carry didn't come from stronger men, but from bolder ones. They weren't better than you. They simply lacked the restraint you've been taught to call common sense. While you hesitated, they advanced. While you wondered what to say, they moved as if they had already won. What no one tells you is that these men weren't born confident. They discovered a flaw in human psychology, a gap that turns insecurity into a weapon. The truth is simple and brutal. The one who dares first gains power over what he fears, and the one who masters what he fears ends up controlling those who watch him. Today, you will hear what they heard, and what you were never given. An old truth, hidden because it creates men no one can contain. Once it takes root, the ordinary man disappears. The dangerous one emerges. From an early age, you were shaped to fit in, not to lead. You were taught that respect comes from kindness, that strength is aggression, and that other people's opinions dictate who you are. This silent doctrine wasn't created to form balanced men, but to produce individuals who are easy to direct. A man trained to avoid conflict loses the ability to generate impact, and when he loses impact, he loses territory. Society doesn't demand that you be weak. It demands that you behave as if you are. Every unwritten rule, speaking softly, apologizing for existing, giving up space even when unnecessary, was imprinted in your mind as a virtue. The same virtue that allows more audacious, less capable, and less ethical men to rise above you without resistance. Weakness isn't born, it's installed. The conditioning is so effective that you start believing your hesitation is natural rather than programmed. You internalize social fear, the shame of asserting yourself, the guilt of taking up space. You convince yourself that thinking before acting is maturity, when many times it is nothing but trained fear under a different name. While you chase approval, others chase advantage, and they find it in your doubts. This emotional training creates predictable men. A predictable man never dominates anything, because everyone knows where he steps, how he reacts, and when he yields. Predictability is the chain that keeps you in the same place while others break limits without fearing judgment. Judgment has never stopped them, because they learned early that the world doesn't punish boldness, it punishes hesitation. The irony is that your good intentions, your concern not to disturb, your quiet diplomacy, everything you believe is politeness, is interpreted as submission. No one respects the man who bends before being pressured. No one follows the man who explains himself before being questioned. Society conditions you to be agreeable, then blames you for not being admired. At work, this appears when you deliver more than expected, but receive less than you deserve. Not due to incompetence, but because your posture communicates that you're satisfied with little. In attraction, it shows when you try to be understood instead of creating impact. And in social circles, you become the man people seek only when they need something, never when they respect someone. The central lie is simple. They told you that being accepted is more important than being necessary. A fatal mistake. The accepted man is disposable. The necessary man is untouchable. Society does not fear the good. It fears the one who doesn't depend on it. And everything that was programmed into you had one purpose: to prevent you from seeing this difference. The confidence you admire in others doesn't come from talent or achievements. It comes from an internal break, a split between who a man once was and who he chooses to become in front of the world. Most people believe confidence is a result of success, but that's just a comfortable narrative created by those who never dared. Real confidence appears before victory because it doesn't depend on it. It's an internal act of rupture, not an external trophy. The forbidden truth, the one few men are willing to face, is that confidence is a decision, not a reflex. And that decision appears when a man stops needing to be right, to be approved, or to be perceived as reasonable. From that moment on, he acts not because he can, but because he refuses to stay still. The hesitant wait for certainty, the bold move without permission. That's why Machiavelli stated, "The bold rule, the hesitant serve." The average man only moves when he feels prepared, which is why he almost never moves. He waits for the perfect scenario, for external approval, for an invisible sign that now it will work, but that sign never comes. Dangerous confidence appears in the man who sees the lack of permission as the ideal space to assert himself. He replaces preparation with presence, doubt with rhythm, and need with decision. There is a psychological line separating men who are feared from men who are ignored. The ignored act only when they know exactly what they're doing. The feared act while they're still figuring it out. That difference creates a strategic advantage. While you are still forming explanations in your mind, the bold man has already occupied the space, shaped the environment, and set the narrative. He doesn't win because he's better. He wins because he arrives first, mentally. This kind of confidence isn't comfortable, gentle, or stable. It's born from internalized discomfort, from the willingness to face consequences, from the coldness to act even when the body trembles. It's a confidence built in the dark, where there is no audience to applaud. It appears when a man realizes that fear doesn't disappear. It simply bends to those who confront it directly. In practical terms, forbidden confidence is the ability to act while others are still thinking. In professional settings, it means taking the lead on projects before anyone decides who should be in charge. In attraction, it means expressing intention clearly without asking permission to exist. In status dynamics, it means taking control of the silence and letting your presence speak before your logic does. This confidence becomes dangerous because it changes the behavior of others without you having to say a word. What most people never understand is that confidence isn't something the world gives you. It's something you take. That's why so few possess it. It demands a type of courage that isn't performed, only executed. Now the remaining question is simple. Will you keep waiting to feel confident, or will you finally decide to take it? The ordinary man reacts to the world exactly as he was conditioned to. He retreats when tension appears, explains himself whenever doubt arises, and talks too much when he feels insecure. These impulses seem natural, but they are nothing more than domesticated reflexes. Machiavelli understood that power is born from inverting these reflexes, the ability to act against your immediate instinct. When everyone pulls back, you advance. When everyone tries to justify themselves, you stay silent. When everyone seeks approval, you observe. Power begins where predictable behavior ends. Machiavellian inversion is not rebellion, it is calculation. When you take a step forward at the exact moment your body begs you to step back, you create psychological asymmetry. The other person expects hesitation and receives advancement. They expect explanations and receive silence. They expect anxiety and find calm. This breaks the social game because it destroys expectations. A man who does not follow the pattern becomes impossible to manipulate, because no one can predict his automatic reaction. There is no automatic reaction. In the workplace, this inversion has an immediate effect. While others try to seem useful by talking, you display confidence through the absence of noise. When a problem appears and everyone looks away, you face it. Not because you want to be a hero, but because you understand that presence under tension reshapes hierarchy. A single counterintuitive action places you above 10 men waiting for instructions. Calculated advancement turns you into a reference point before anyone realizes it. In relationships, this inversion becomes even more powerful. Most people respond to small rejections with anxiety, long messages, explanations, justifications. The Machiavellian posture turns this into strategic silence, not as punishment, but as a demonstration of autonomy. When someone reduces their energy, you don't rush to compensate, you keep your pace. This dismantles power dynamics because the person who expects a reaction loses control when they don't get one. Lack of urgency becomes your weapon. The rule is simple, but it requires discipline. Do the opposite of your impulse. If the impulse is to speak, stay quiet. If the impulse is to withdraw, remain still. If the impulse is to explain, observe. Inversion is not unnatural. It is anti-programming. You stop being guided by tension and start guiding it. And when you control the tension, you control the situation. The ordinary man justifies himself because he fears judgment. The Machiavellian man stays silent because he knows silence creates doubt. Doubt is more lethal than any argument. This code is not about becoming unpredictable. It is about becoming unreadable. Predictability hands your mental map to others. Unreadability forces them to adjust to your rhythm, your posture, your timing. This is how men who seem larger than they truly are emerge. Not because they possess more strength, but because they reject the automatic gestures that reveal weakness. Now you understand the essence. Power does not come from doing more. It comes from doing the opposite. And the real question is unavoidable. How far are you willing to invert your own instincts so that you stop being the man who reacts and become the man who sets the pace? Presence is not born from appearance. It comes from internal command. A dangerously confident man doesn't need to move quickly. raise his voice, or prove anything. He occupies space as if he already owns it. His calculated slowness shows that he doesn't fear interruptions, doesn't fear attention, and doesn't fear judgment. Every gesture is economical, as if he knows that any excess movement exposes insecurity. Presence begins when the body stops reacting to the environment and starts directing it. Rhythm is one of his invisible weapons. While others rush their speech to fill silence, he slows down. While others display energy to seem relevant, he lowers his own to demonstrate control. A man who moves slowly in an anxious environment creates contrast, and contrast creates hierarchy. The one who sets the rhythm sets the social reading, and the one who sets the social reading determines who is followed and who is ignored. Silent presence is a form of command. To dominate an environment is not to impose force, but to shape perception. The dangerous man observes first, not out of caution, but because he understands that the observer controls the field. He reads intentions, detects tension, understands dynamics, and refuses to waste energy reacting to what doesn't matter. His ability to choose where to place his attention creates a psychological aura. He appears unshakable, and when a man appears unshakable, others project power onto him, even if they don't know his story. Posture is another pillar. Aligned shoulders, steady chin, a gaze that doesn't look away but also doesn't seek approval. It is the gaze of someone who evaluates, not someone who asks to be seen. He doesn't smile automatically, because automatic smiles are gestures of appeasement. He doesn't shrink his body to fit into spaces because that signals submission. His posture communicates that he is present by choice, not by permission. This kind of body language carries more weight than speeches. In social interactions, his advantage becomes even clearer. While others try to impress with words, he impresses with effortlessness. He speaks less, but when he does, every sentence sounds final. He doesn't compete for attention, he receives it. He doesn't try to take space. Space rearranges around him. This isn't charisma, it's silent intimidation, and it works because humans are wired to follow the one who shows no rush, no fear, and no need. Authority is born from the scarcity of reaction. This presence becomes even more lethal because it doesn't depend on the setting. At work, he isn't the loudest, but the most considered. In relationships, he isn't the most excited, but the most remembered. Among friends, he isn't the most talkative, but the most respected. The consistency of his calm forces the world to treat him as a reference point, not because he demands it, but because he embodies the internal structure of a man who has already conquered himself. That is why men like this seem bigger, stronger, harder to confront. They're not. They simply learned what you're beginning to see. Presence isn't appearance, it's sovereignty. And the question that follows is quiet but unavoidable. Do you have the courage to make fewer movements in order to gain more authority? Silence isn't the absence of sound. It's the presence of what the other person is afraid to think. Most people talk too much because they fear being interpreted, misunderstood, or seen as insecure. But the man who masters silence refuses to play that game. He knows that words are cheap, while the lack of them creates tension, expectation, and discomfort. Where everyone rushes to explain themselves, he stays still, letting the other reveal more than they intended. Silence exposes vulnerabilities that speech hides. A pause is an extension of that power. A well-placed pause disrupts the other person's impulses because it forces them to confront their own nervousness. Pausing after an insult, a provocation, or a demand creates an immediate psychological reversal. The attacker now has to justify the attack. The one applying pressure now has to explain the pressure. The pause turns the attack into a confession. The man who waits while the other twists becomes the center of the interaction without lifting a finger. A low tone is the third element of this triad. It reduces effort and increases the perception of authority. A man who speaks quietly forces others to lean in, to straighten their posture, to pay attention. He doesn't compete with the room, he shapes it. A low tone slows the world down, and when people slow down for you, they recognize your rhythm as dominant. No physical force creates as much control as a voice that doesn't rise. In professional environments, strategic silence is devastating. In meetings where everyone trips over their own words to seem useful, the silent man listens, evaluates, and speaks only when the decision is already clear. When he finally intervenes, his words carry the weight of someone who hasn't wasted energy. This makes his speech appear more rational, more solid, more final. Silence creates authority because it signals that he doesn't need to prove relevance. It's recognized before he says a word. In relationships, the pause reshapes power dynamics. When someone tries to push you emotionally, a prolonged pause destroys any attempt at manipulation. It shows you are not emotionally accessible, not reacting on impulse, not rushing to smooth over tension. The pause communicates self-control, and self-control disarms anyone who relies on reaction to gain leverage. The absence of urgency prevents the other person from dictating the pace, and whoever sets the pace controls the outcome. In attraction, silence has another effect. It creates mystery. While anxious men try to impress with words and energy, the man who remains calm, responds with pauses, and avoids automatic smiles triggers curiosity. He doesn't reveal intention immediately. He doesn't display emotion all at once. The mystery isn't a performance. It's the natural result of inner control. The man who speaks little forces the other to interpret, and whoever interprets becomes invested. Ultimately, silence is a weapon because it exposes those who lack emotional control. Anyone who can't endure a few seconds of quiet reveals anxiety, fear, or insecurity. The man who can hold that space, who stays steady while the world waits for his reaction, becomes a presence that cannot be ignored. And that leads to the inevitable conclusion. The one who controls silence controls the room, and the one who controls the room controls the fate of everyone inside it. A man who controls his own impulses becomes untouchable. Most people react on instinct. They get irritated when provoked, feel flattered by praise, become tense when others go silent, and panic when ignored. This predictable emotional pattern makes anyone an easy target because the world quickly learns which buttons to press. But an emotionally inaccessible man destroys that map. He doesn't move under external pressure. He studies it. He doesn't respond to stimuli. He decodes them. His calm isn't passivity, it's strategy. Ignoring an insult isn't weakness, it's calculation. When someone tries to belittle you, the goal isn't to hurt you, but to measure your reaction. Anyone who gets angry shows vulnerability. Anyone who justifies themselves reveals insecurity. Anyone who reacts impulsively surrenders ground. A man with an emotional fortress simply watches, and the aggressor loses what they were seeking: information. The lack of reaction returns the attack to its sender, exposing them in their own attempt to dominate. That's how some men win battles without speaking. Praise is a subtler trap. Many think praise is always positive, but it creates expectation, symbolic debt, and openings. Those who need it become easy to manipulate, because living for approval means living through concessions. A feared man receives praise with the same coldness he applies to criticism. He doesn't change his tone, posture, or energy. He shows that his worth isn't negotiated through external perception. Emotional stability is read as strength, even by those who hide envy behind admiration. Absence, ignored messages, delayed responses, silence triggers anxiety in anyone who is emotionally dependent. Many rush to fix the other person's absence as if it were their fault. The fortified man doesn't interpret absence as a threat, but as information. He understands that absence reveals priorities, intentions, and interests. He doesn't try to fill the void. He observes who shows themselves inside it. Calm in the face of absence destroys emotional games because it eliminates the ground those games depend on. Provocations are the final test. Most people fall for them because they mistake provocation for attack. A provocation is actually an invitation to lose control. Accept that invitation, and you lose power. The feared man sees provocation as a confession of weakness, someone trying to extract a reaction they can't trigger naturally. His response is always the same: a pause, a steady look, calculated silence. The provocateur needs chaos. The man who controls chaos wins without effort. This emotional control creates a presence that intimidates without intention. In social environments, everyone notices that you don't get shaken, don't rush, don't justify yourself. People begin choosing words more carefully, adjusting posture and modifying behavior around you. At work, your calm under pressure reshapes hierarchy. In relationships, your stability creates both desire and respect. Among men, your emotional neutrality is viewed as hidden strength. Being emotionally inaccessible doesn't mean being cold to the world. It means being sovereign within yourself. When no one can manipulate your mood, no one can manipulate your decisions. And when your decisions become untouchable, you become something very few men ever manage to be. A wall the world tries to break, but rarely manages to scratch. The death of the weak self is not a symbolic ritual. It is an internal amputation. You carry habits, reflexes, and beliefs that were installed in you long before you realized you were living under someone else's command. The weak part is not the one that feels fear. It is the one that seeks permission. It is the part that steps back to avoid bothering others, that speaks to fill silence, that asks for validation to exist. This self does not disappear on its own. It must be removed like an obsolete structure that blocks progress. All power begins the moment you decide to abandon the man the world taught you to be. Reprogramming identity is not about catchy phrases or repeated mantras. It is about confronting the behaviors you execute automatically. When you notice yourself lowering your head before thinking, over-explaining without being asked, or accepting emotional crumbs as if they were recognition, you identify where submission is still alive. Reprogramming starts the moment you replace the automatic with the deliberate. Every gesture becomes chosen, not inherited. When choice enters the room, weakness loses ground. Eliminating old conditioning requires coldness. You must question who taught you to be too polite, too gentle, and too understanding. You must understand that much of what is called virtue was in fact a social mechanism designed to make you harmless. The obedient man is useful to everyone except himself. Identity is neither kindness nor aggression. It is coherence. You need to choose who you are when no one is watching, because that is the man who will emerge when the world tries to test you. The destruction of the old self is not dramatic, it is silent. You begin saying no where you once said of course. You start walking more slowly where you once rushed to please. You begin looking directly into people's eyes where you once looked away. These are not grand gestures. They are micro-reprogramming steps that, combined, dismantle the submissive version society trained into you. The weak self dies when you stop seeking approval and start seeking precision. Precision doesn't please, it imposes. In relationships, this death becomes visible. You stop accepting dynamics that force you to prove your worth. You stop justifying delays, mistakes, and reactions that harm no one but your own dignity. You stop being the man who adapts and become the man who sets the pace. Reprogramming changes how people perceive you. It first creates discomfort, then respect. When someone gets used to your fragility, your strength will feel like an affront, and that is exactly how it should be. In the workplace, reprogramming shifts your foundational behavior. You begin to take the posture of a reference, not an emotional subordinate. You no longer try to appear useful. You are useful. You no longer try to earn space. You occupy it. You no longer avoid conflict. You resolve it. The reprogrammed man does not run from tension because he understands that tension is the environment where real hierarchies are formed. The calmer you remain within that environment, the faster the old identity collapses. The death of the weak self is not the end. It is the opening of a new internal empire. And once that empire solidifies, you become something few men dare to be. Someone who does not negotiate his own narrative, because he finally understands that identity is the first form of power, and the last to be claimed by those who spend their lives trusting too much in the man they used to be. When a man abandons the need for approval, something quiet and inevitable happens. He stops being shaped by his environment and begins shaping it himself. True authority does not come from titles, praise, or visible achievements. It emerges when no one else holds power over his internal state. A man like this doesn't ask whether he is going too far. He observes who is trying to limit him. He doesn't seek permission because he understands that every form of permission invites submission. Becoming one's own authority means breaking centuries of conditioning and stepping into a role that was always his, but that he never dared to claim. This rise becomes noticeable when his decisions start to carry a weight that others don't question. People begin adjusting their own behavior before speaking to him, not out of obvious fear but through instinct. They sense that they cannot manipulate him, cannot bargain for his attention, cannot use emotions to bend his axis. The stability he built by killing the weaker self creates a psychological field that influences everyone around him. That is how a man becomes a reference point, when his presence forces the world to reorganize itself. This new axis changes his posture in social environments. He no longer seeks a place to fit in, nor does he compete with those desperate for attention. His constant observation gives the impression that he understands more than he reveals, and that impression becomes true because he genuinely sees what he once overlooked: intentions, games, dynamics, hierarchies. A man who is his own authority perceives patterns that dependent men cannot. He doesn't react to the social climate, he defines it. This creates a natural distance, neither arrogant nor forced, but unshakable. In relationships, his rise redefines what connection means. He doesn't enter bonds to fill internal voids, nor does he allow others to cross his boundaries. His emotional autonomy prevents anyone from dictating his rhythm. He doesn't chase, beg, or try to prove his worth. And because of this, he is seen as rare, not because he pretends to be cold, but because he operates from a center that does not waver. The security he built doesn't need explanation. It's felt, and what is felt has far more impact than anything spoken. At work, this rise appears effortlessly. He stops being the anxious executor and becomes the man whose opinion carries weight, even when he speaks little. Silent authority is more powerful than formal authority because it doesn't depend on a title. It depends on presence. When he speaks, he is heard. When he proposes, he is considered. When he refuses, he is respected. The world reacts to him as if he possesses an internal structure that others lack. And that perception is exactly what forms hierarchy. Being one's own authority does not mean isolation. It means never losing yourself in any interaction. It means that no external energy defines who you are, what your value is, or what your next move should be. This kind of man is feared, admired, and above all, unpredictable. He does not bend to the environment, he surpasses it. And once you reach this point, only one silent question remains for the world. Who exactly dares to tell a man like this what he should be?